Little discussion here, guys, about physical media. I just read another article yesterday. Actually, I didn't read it all. I skim read it. It was about the benefits of and also the resurgence of especially the Blu-ray disc. Um, how it's sort of going into a collector's market now, and like so many other articles, and we're all aware of as physical media collectors. Um, we're all aware that the DVD and the Blu-ray is just not the main form of people consuming video material, movies, and um, it's sad we've passed through that stage. I personally have felt its impact. I worked at a DVD CD store for it was just about 8 years before the store closed. It was just almost 8 years. And in fact, I'm wearing this old shirt here today from it was one of the T-shirts I used to wear back in the day. But the store closed way back in 2011, so that was a long time ago. And I don't wear this shirt very often for the sake of not stinking it up or whatever. Huh. Maybe that's not the right word to use. But yeah, physical media is one of those things we're all left wondering: where are we wasting our money? To some degree, I think we might be if we're probably indulging too much, and that all depends on each person's personal budget. But I think, and I want to address that a little bit later, I think that feeling guilty for purchasing and collecting items is something that will come natural to us, and perhaps even with our different backgrounds or parental upbringing, maybe even our religious upbringing or social expectations on like things like greed and things like wasting money and being frugal and all that sort of thing with our money. So which I'm not denying that we should do in this, but the idea, as we often see, comes up about physical media and will it be there for us in the future? I think one of the biggest things I worry about, I don't know about you, is not so much the physical media not being there. Well, there's two things really. One is that the physical media is going to let us down because we're all aware of disc rot now, and I had no idea back in the day when I was like working in the store. Um, you know, over the counter product was going out all the time. A lot of Warner Brothers DVDs and it was just at that time too. It's about 2000. I guess it's into 2009. If you look up that article online about the most, I guess all DVDs, all discs are subject to the potential of disc rot. But this is not what this today. I'm not going to discuss that so much today. But I'm just thinking that aside from the two things is that the product itself may not be able to work, the things that we collect, and the fact that it may be difficult to even get a Blu-ray, 4K player, DVD player down the road. Now, if you're like me, I do have a few options. I've got a 4K Blu-ray player, which will play DVDs as well. I have a Blu-ray player, which I've basically tucked away for when the 4K dies. I had it before. And also I've got a little DVD player and screen right behind me. I've got a bigger, 4K television downstairs in my living room. But yeah, I've kind of got this and a couple old VHS players that my parents had when they lived in their home. So I've kind of got that stuff kind of tucked away in a closet for a rainy era, I guess, because those are the two main things: is whether our discs or the media itself, whether it's VHS or whatever, is it going to fail us in 10, 15 years? A lot of people take the attitude that really, as long as it's around for their own lifetime, that's fine. They're cool with that. Like, as long as they know that as they get into, past their senior years and into the not being around years, that their DVDs will last them, so they get to enjoy. Because we all know that there's a lot of TV shows, a lot of movies that really you can't depend on streaming. And that's really what I want to talk about. This article that I read, actually I kind of skim read it, to be honest. What I read was more of the fact that streaming, 4K streaming, is nowhere near comparable to 4K digital media, physical media. And I would agree with that, because a lot of people's resolution, or what they're able to see on their television, even if it's 4K, depends on how much they can stream. Like how much data they're getting to show in their honestly, and dedicated to it, to like your full 2 hours. You're going to get the same. You're never going to beat, at least from what we see now in our lifetime, we're never going to beat the Blu-ray disc and the DVD, because it will not fail the same as, considering that it doesn't go into disc rot or disrepair over the years. It will deliver the same quality, and maybe like in the future, as it will now. With some degradation. I would imagine there will be some degradation, perhaps, with the product, because everything, even ourselves, we do degrade over time. But I think there's no replacing physical media. I think there's a place for still collecting it. I do know that there's a lot of younger people now that are collecting. They've got back into it. I think there are online. There's a lot of discussion about, how much am I spending? Am I getting addicted to it? And I think there's some truth to that. I found it in my own life. I found that I can get addicted to there's a few stores around. And when I go to a store and I see a Blu-ray and it's for I live in Canada, and say it's $6.50 for a Blu-ray, and it might be one I want to watch, but I know it's on Tubi or YouTube or Netflix. Well, I don't really have Netflix right now myself, but say Prime or something. I'll still sometimes dish out the $6 or $7, $10 to get that. I know it's a fairly decent movie, but I could just watch it and be done with it. But I guess that's a little bit of maybe the old me, the old habits. They say old habits die. So, I think that if you're cautious with how you're spending, there's a way of looking at collecting physical media that justifies it. And I would say one is, it's really justifying it, in my mind, for the quality, and maybe not the price. I'm not getting into the price here. When I see 4K discs in Canada going, they can go from $45, $48 for just an old movie, and that's a lot of money. A couple discs and you're into $100 almost, So, but the ones that you really want, like I've got a lot of old sci-fi, like from the 50s, and perhaps even a lot of classic horror from the 40s and that. And I'm kind of replacing the ones that I know, like Conquest of Space. I just recently bought Conquest of Space, and I Married a Monster from Outer Space, and it was a double DVD, a Blu-ray, sorry. And I have them on DVD as separate movies, but because of this, disc rot, and I thought, well, I'll get one. Hopefully Blu-ray will hold up for me. They're just regular Blu-rays. I don't know if they're BD50s or what they would be. I think I've got that number right. But yeah, I think there's justification for the fact that you're going to see a quality image that you're just not going to see on streaming, which was the point of this. I think I like to think of collecting DVDs, as well as I do collect some collectibles too. Not so much for resale, because I really lost a lot of faith in the idea that these toys are going to really be worth something. Say I live another 20 years, I'm not sure if these recent McFarlane Batmans, 66 Batman collection, which I have a lot of those, Are they really going to be worth the ones that the toys and collectibles from the 70s? What they are now, like the Star Wars figures, are, I doubt it. I doubt it. I really do, because we were the ones, like, I'm borderline Gen X boomer. I really operate more like a Gen X than a boomer, but I'm in that age where I kind of the best and worst of both worlds. But I know that millennials, both my children both still buy, or two of my three children, both guys, they still buy the movie. Like, if they want to see Oppenheimer or the latest, say, Batman, Indiana Jones, whatever, there's certain movies that I wouldn't say they're collectors, but they will own those movies, and there's something about owning them. I don't know what you guys think, but I've lately been thinking a lot about uh, collecting collectibles the same way. Like, I'm an artist as well. I do my own artwork, and but I do like to collect these things in a sense as if I'm collecting art. And I think there's something really good about that. I think that if you look at it that way and you do it with an affordable budget, where there's times are going to be lean, you just don't buy it. Don't buy that. Like, I'm talking to myself here. Like, if it's a movie that I can see that I really don't care about that much, but it's a good movie, and I'm already paying for a streaming service, and that movie's available, then why buy it? Save myself some money. Because those days of, they phased out in the 2000s where you went to the counter and you just, we had guys that would come in and spend $400 on DVDs, whole shows, and some of this stuff was really good classic stuff, um, box sets and things, film noir, adventure. So I tend to look at it in the sense that by being an art collector, I really like, for example, I have some of the Super 7 reaction collectible toys, I guess. Some of them, most of them aren't even out of their packages, but I love the art. I just love the art that's there. I think the art is a huge part of it, because it's the same as, when you saw the illustrations for Star Wars. I've actually got up here on the wall. The fellow just recently passed away. I can't think of his name. Maybe you guys can and put it down. But, he had the original poster there of, Luke doing this, and yeah, and Darth Vader's helmet, face in the stars. So we're kind of coming from that, where we want to see the art and also the media itself, the actual movie itself, as an art form. Very much the same way, say, Christopher Nolan. Like, I saw him in one of those, where they go into the Criterion book corner or whatever it is. Oh, gee, what's the name of those videos now? I can't think of it, but where a celebrity or a well-known person will go in and choose their favorite movies and talk about their favorite, and they'll actually have the physical media DVD they'll buy. I think we can think of that as collecting, and I think every collector has to know when to fold them, when to stop. That's when it becomes an addiction, when it's going above what either you have room for in your house, which is something, both my wife and I are dealing with right now. Is we had recently cleaned up my parents' folks' home, and now we have to clean, and where I found a lot of my own old stuff from the 70s, which is kind of cool. I don't know if I got something right around here or not, but they'll be in future videos, things I found. Actually, I don't know if you see it up there, but the Starlog magazine, I had found it out in the shed, and it's the 100-page science fiction spectacular, and I can't see the date from here, but it was something that I bought as a teenager, young adult, so it is old. So I think if you think of it like this, to be clear, if you think of it as you're collecting the physical media for its, if you can afford it, grab that 4K And, you know, I love getting the 4K and the Blu-ray. I love that because then I know that if my 4K dies on me, that I've got a regular Blu-ray disc. Maybe the blacks won't be as deep. Maybe there'll be a blue tinge to the whole movie, but at least I'll still have a good quality, high resolution copy of that movie. So I love it when you have your 4K Blu-ray and then your regular Blu-ray in a 2-pack. I love that. You know, I think that's kind of worth it when you're spending $30. You know, depending on the movie. So the other part of it too, this is kind of a strange way to look at it, but I think as collectors, what we're doing is we're thinking of, we're part of those people that niche group of people that are thinking of collecting things to keep for the future generations. I mean, it's not your main, you don't go to, how many of us go to the store and say, well, I want to pick up that 4K or that Blu-ray because I'm thinking of 50 years from now, and when, you know, they start looking for copies of this extant movie or whatever, extinct movie, then, you know, they'll find ours in some place in our closet, in a humidity controlled closet or something. Well, there is that aspect. I think there is that aspect that we are part of that. I mean, look at Metropolis. I remember I've got a few copies of Fritz Lang's Metropolis. Not one of the most recent ones, but I think the last one I had was maybe from Kino. And I remember that we used to get a copy. You could get it in public domain, right, anywhere. And it was so, you could hardly make out what you were seeing on these cheap box sets, which has its own charm. I mean, you know, late in the evening and, you know, it's dark out and, you know, and you see in this not so clear picture, it does have a certain atmosphere, you know. Sometimes detail can be too, like I have a 4K Blu-ray and I should do a, review of this. I started collecting the old classic horror, the Universal horror. And one of the things I noticed about The Creature from Black Lagoon was that in some places it was like grainy, and some places it wasn't. And maybe that was for the source of their film that they had, you know, when they did a 4K scan of stuff or whatever, if they can do that. Maybe they only relied on a 2K and then upscaled it to 4K. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But I think it was based on a 4K scan, or maybe even an 8K, and they went down, something like that. Anyways, off topic. But what I noticed was there's a scene and they're in the cave, and they're looking for Julia. You know, I think if I can remember right, but it was so clear that I can almost see the division, like you see behind me where the two walls meet. They had background art that probably, just like seeing the strings on some of the Eagles, or, you know, from Space 1999 or spaceships back in the day, they relied on poor transmission to everyone's television set. A lot of times that you wouldn't see those strings. In fact, I was recently watching the Blu-ray version, Blu-ray release of Battlestar Galactica, the original 1978 Battlestar Galactica. And they're setting some bombs out on the ship, and you can see Apollo and Starbuck, and they're floating, but you can clearly see that they're both on 2 cables each. So, yeah, see, when we watched that on television in the 70s, late 70s, and it's coming across VHF. It's been so long since I said that. I can't remember. VHF signaling down your antenna, and you used to have to point it in the right direction, and if it was a little bit this way, a little bit that way, it'd be more and more fuzzy, blurry. But yeah, so it really helped with suspension of disbelief. Pardon the pun, suspension. But maybe I'm off topic here. But to get back to it, I do think that there is value in continuing to collect these discs. I think we need to do as a community as much as we can to preserve good quality copies of the art that's been created, the history. Leave it as it is. Get copies that haven't been changed for the sake of the latest. I don't want to say whims, but it comes across that way sometimes. Of certain, I don't want to get into the political correctness aspect of it, but I do realize there's sensitivities there today that, heck, the poster I got behind me, I've actually got some cloth draped over it. So if you're familiar with the House on Haunted Hill poster behind me, you can look it up. I do have some sort of, for effect, I got some old stuff I had for Halloween and some gauze or whatever hanging there to kind of cover up what's going on. And if you're familiar with this, you'll know what I'm talking about, because back then, that wasn't a sensitivity to put that poster up, as far as I know. But today it would be, and it would be with YouTube. It would be, I'm assuming. So I kind of covered up the image some, even though you can't really see the whole thing anyway. It's still good, I think, to have copies that haven't been changed, even if there are things in it that we don't like. It does record our history. It does let future generations know what it was like, what was acceptable, what wasn't. I mean, I think of some cartoons from the 60s that I love, but I don't love where they maybe place women's roles in society and this general outlook, and even the fact that they were created in a heavily white culture, male culture. That's not to say they're all bad, because we need that too, but it does, eliminate. Anyways, there's so much to talk about here. I'll have to save it for future videos. What this video is about is the importance of continuing to collect. We'll talk maybe more about whether you're addicted or not in another video. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments about this whole thing. I do think physical media is important, and I do think as long as we can keep up purchasing, then the companies will put out, and I saw some statistics that physical media sales have gone up. It's never going to go back to the 80s and 90s. It's never going to go like that, at least that I know of. But it's great, and it's like I tell everybody, it's like when the streaming stops, when the zombie apocalypse comes, if I've got a generator, whether it be solar power or gasoline, and I got my VHS and my TV set, I can still watch that movie, and I'm not depending on some streaming service. Anything you'd like to add? I really appreciate your comments, and if you want to like and subscribe, it's obvious. Do it. Don't. But so we'll see you in the next one, and we might continue this conversation in many different forms. This channel is called. My name is Kevin, by the way. Welcome and pleased to meet you. And the channel's name is Cheesy Thumbprints. See you in the next one.